Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Vanguard Legacy event, Reinvigorating the Shape of the North-east Economy. And this morning we have an event focused on innovation and technology. I hope you've got your heads polished, men, and your hair looking beautiful, because from the back we have YouTube streaming us live today, so please don't swear. And if you're going to do it, please swear very, very quietly. So we're going to be a little bit lighthearted this morning. We've got 4 great panelists with us. And this event follows a previous one in food and drink, with another 2 to come. And the format we're going to follow today for this session is we're going to get 5 minutes each from the panelists, and then we're just going to have an open discussion. I've got a few questions for you, which I take you through on the board. And my innovation today is that you get a 10-second countdown when I tell you to answer the question. Now, last time it was so quick that apparently you didn't get the chance to read the questions. So this time I'm going to allow you to actually see the questions before you answer them. I guess I'll also take a little bit of time to send up the panelists as well during their introductions. The series of events is sponsored by Brodies, so thanks for catering for us today and hosting us. And it's in conjunction with Shell too. And the Vanguard series is all about the future of the North-east economy and ultimately making things happen. And for all of you, I hope you feel involved in that because you're here. But the whole process that we're going through as a region is about that reinvention of our economy. And really, it's putting in place the building blocks for the next 5 to 10 years, but doing that pretty quickly over the next few years. And so we're going to hear some of that today. In terms of other involvement, feel free to use Twitter using the hashtag Aberdeen Vanguard or AGCC events. As I said, I'll take you through some voting, and this will be recorded, but it's really for the use of Brodies and the guys to write some reports at the end of it. So please don't worry about asking questions, and I will prompt you if I feel I need to. So it's nearly 8:35, and because these guys only get 5 minutes, I've got to introduce you first. So I'm going to go from the farthest away here. So Shona is an expert in IP, and she's an associate at Brodies. She deals with knowledge transfer, strategic ventures across, I understand, all industries. So it's a fairly wide role. And finally, in your bio, apparently you are recognised by Chambers and Partners as an associate to watch. Now, somebody to watch is not usually a good thing. So I guess in a business context, that may be something better. Then we have Deborah. Deborah has one of these biogs that makes everybody feel bad, but most of these guys do for me. So a biotechnologist with 2 decades of experience in anti-infectives, and the biog is such that I can't actually read a lot of the words, so I just go through this quite quickly. She founded Nova Biotics in 2004 and spends a lot of her time overseas. And before she returned to Aberdeen, spent time at University College London, San Diego, and Ghent. She is on the Life Science Leadership Group for Scotland and various other commitments across Europe in the sector too. Then we have Jackie. Jackie is a marketing and communications expert, believe it or not. I guess we might not hear too much of that today, but we'll see. But he leads the Oil and Gas Technology Centre business case, which David's now working in. So there's a nice link there. So as Jackie wrote that business case, we should, I guess, all thank him with a little round of applause for getting the money here. He's got 25 years of experience in broadly economic development and commerce. But now he's also leading on the Opportunity North-east digital agenda as well, which when we look at this space and innovation and technology is very important. And then finally we have David. David's a young, attractive one, and can be seen on Instagram and other cool social media platforms. But he's got an impressive work background too, 14 years across various operation and service companies, Most recently at Wood Group, where he set up actually and ran their global innovation and growth function, and possibly something which has informed his work today at the Oil and Gas Technology Centre, where he's director of the Technology Accelerator. Now, some of you will know, if you've seen me emceeing any of these things before, that I like to do a bit of stalking before the event. So just for a bit of fun, I had a look at the LinkedIn profiles. So David has his best skill is in knowledge management, recommended by 78 people. Unfortunately, team building is something he's not great at, with only 2 people recommending him for that. So, Deborah, biotechnology, unsurprisingly, 13 recommendations. I'll stay off the life sciences topic, apparently, though, with only 2 recommendations there. Jackie, project management, 33 recommendations, so good score there, but only 1 on employee surveys. There is a chamber member of staff here who, if you want to talk about employee surveys, I'm happy to do so. And Shona, intellectual property, 14, and you look very nervous here, actually. Courts, I'm not going to be using you when you back me. Only 1 person recommended you on that. So, without further ado, having taken the mick out of you, Shona, can you give us your 5 minutes, please?
Thank you, James. I think the reason I've only got 1 in court is because I keep people out of it. I'll try to argue that, but we'll see. So thank you very much. I was at university up in Aberdeen and went and worked in the Central Belt for a while and moved back up here. And one of the reasons I moved back up here and one of the things that sort of appealed to me about the North-east is the opportunities up here and the amazing things that are already going on in terms of entrepreneurial activity, particularly obviously in the oil and gas industry, but also in other industries, sectors such as life sciences. And I really sort of wanted to be part of an area that is looking to drive forward and improve what they have to offer. And I don't think they shout quite enough about what else is going on in terms of technology, innovation. And for me, up here, I think what's really important across the board with innovation and technology is one theme, and that's connectivity. And we see that from talking to clients and also from my own experiences in the Central Belt working there in terms of what works. And by connectivity, I mean, it flows through various different themes, one of which being collaboration, not just within industry sectors, but cross-industry. We've seen GlaxoSmithKline collaborate with the oil and gas industry in terms of medical devices already. Young tech companies, I mean, digital technology is such a important area in terms of growth going forward, and it can introduce efficiencies, cost savings, and accelerate growth in all types of industries. And there's also collaboration between industry and academia. I've worked on secondment at a couple of universities in the research and commercialisation office. And for years, there's been increasing pressure on the universities to work more with industry. It's all government initiatives, that sort of encouragement. And there's struggles and challenges there in terms of how universities work and how they work with industry. They're very different business models, but they're a real hotbed of really, really high quality resource, and it would be great to see them working more and more with industry. And whilst universities have been sort of trying to open themselves up to that, it's really nice to see up here that industry is taking a bit of a lead in trying to drive more collaboration and discussion between academia and industry. And we've got great universities up here, and the innovation hubs, they're working with them. They're trying to address issues in terms of the skills gap, particularly in digital technology, trying to integrate students at an early age with industry so that they have the skills that businesses need when they come out. Certainly, even studying law when you graduate, it's an academic degree, but it's not until you actually start working that you really start to understand what that means, and you can bring real value to what you're doing. So collaboration for me is really key, and underpinning all that is, I think, developing a city and a region that supports that through transportation, through hubs, places for people to go and meet. I think culture and that sort of thing is really important. When I did work in Edinburgh, I did quite a lot of work with Creative Edinburgh, which was originally set up, and the main focus was artists and sort of media. And it grew. It was set up about 5 years ago, and its membership has grown at a really rapid rate, and it's attracted digital companies. I mean, it's got a really diverse grouping of membership now, and a lot of people come through from Glasgow because they said there's nothing in Glasgow, and Glasgow's always been thought of as a slightly more creative industry. But when you've got these things happening, people come, people want to connect, and I think that's the underlying message that I would like to get across, and certainly what clients discuss with me. So.
Thank you very much. I was just about to cut you off because you went a little bit over time there. I was gentle, given that you're hosting and I ate one of your bacon rolls. So my new way of working today was not telling you that there's no fire plan. So if there is a fire, somebody will take you outside and look after you. Jackie, you've got 5 minutes, and I will cut you off.
You'll hear the beep in a minute. Okay. I do have a background in marketing and communications, but I also have quite a strong background in innovation and technology. I'm quite a bit older than probably most of you in this room this morning, but over 20 years ago, using my marketing head, I was involved in an industry which was very much the forerunner to digital. It was telecommunications. So in the mid-90s, I was involved in a company that had innovation is the key as its strapline. And at that time, it was all about disruptive technology, disruptive marketing propositions. So, so this term innovation and technology is a constant. You work in a context, you work in a market at a time. And I think ultimately, for all of us, it's understanding that principle. There's nothing constant. You have to be changing, you have to be innovating, you have to be ahead of the game, you have to be aware of your competition. Coming back to where I am today, Opportunity North-east, and show of hands, who's heard of Opportunity North-east? Great, very good. Doesn't matter, I still have to do the pitch. The pitch is important because it provides the context to innovation and technology in this region today. Opportunity North-east was set up about 18 months ago, primarily to act as a coordinating agent for the private sector's involvement in ensuring that we maximised economic recovery from the UKCS, but also to ensure that we had a diversified and resilient economy going forward. We do that through working with industry and public sector partners. We are privately funded. We have the benefit of the Wood Foundation as our benefactor, but the model ensures that we leverage the money that we get with the Wood Foundation to be at least the same as the money we have from the Wood Foundation. So we have 29 million of funds to invest in what we term as transformational projects over a 5-year period. So as I say, we're 18 months into that. 29 million is by virtue of, we started with 4 sectors. Our region's strengths are very much sectoralized. Digital and innovation crosses all of those sectors, but from a project focus, and we are an action-orientated organization, so we invest in projects to deliver outcomes. We don't just talk about it, we actually put money on the table and we do things and we track and evolve from that. The end modus operandi is creating economic value, whether that's jobs, businesses, products, etc. No, ultimately, we recognize that oil and gas is a key strength within this region, alongside food and drink, life sciences, tourism, and obviously others. Professional services in itself is a very strong component within this region. The oil and gas industry would not exist without the intellect that exists in companies like Brodies, and there are other companies out there like Brodies, obviously. So obviously from our point of view, what we want to do is make sure we have a structure in place that will enable the innovation and technology to come through. The structure that we use is private sector involvement in boards for those sectors. So we have over 75 individuals from the private sector across our 5 boards and our main boards, and Deborah sits on our life sciences board. So from that point of view, and the main board in that context, so from that point of view, life sciences board, sorry, we have 75 people from industry advising us on the ideas that we have, the ideas that they have, how we can shape our ideas into projects, and who we can work with. And then obviously tracking and ensuring we deliver on what we say we're going to do. Now, alongside that, one is the private sector arm of the Aberdeen City Region deal. For those of you who don't know, the City Region deal was a mechanism by which both the Scottish Government and the UK governments essentially put a proposition out there to say, bid for money. And just to qualify something that James did say, I wasn't the only person that put the business case together for the OGTC. There were a team of us. But essentially, the OGTC is a product of monies that we were able to extract from the City Region deal. The City Region deal, from a private sector perspective, was an opportunity at a time where we recognized we could grasp a substantial amount of money to support innovation in this region. The concept that we had was, if we can create innovation hubs around oil and gas, life sciences, food and drink, we can provide a mechanic by which industry, academia, clinicians, etc., can all work together to bring innovative products, technologies to the table that will help ensure that we have a strong and successful supply chain, that we have a strong and successful economy. And we did that through identifying the likes of the OGTC to ensure that we maximize economic recovery. And for those of you that don't know the stats, and I'm not a statistician, but essentially we've taken 40+ billion barrels of oil out of the North Sea. There are estimates of another 10 to 20 potentially available. What we say, and what the Wood Review said, which led into the business case for the OGTC, that technology in itself and the adoption and development of new technology will account for probably at least 5 to 7 billion barrels of that additional 20. So it's essential that we have a mechanism in place by which we can bring that technology innovation through, and David will talk about that, obviously. The second innovation hub is life sciences for biotherapeutics, and Deborah can comment on that in much more detail than I can.
That's your 10-second warning.
And obviously, we talked about digital and entrepreneurialism, and that's the latest innovation that we're looking at. So from a point of view of a hub to create that kind of context to the Northeast, it's early days, but we're obviously putting a lot of focus on that today.
Okay, thank you very much. You forgot, the alarm didn't go off at the other end, unfortunately. I was waiting for a bit of tech to work there. There you go. We planned this beforehand. Deborah, you're up next, 5 minutes.
Okay, good morning everyone. That was a fantastic segue from Jackie into some of the stuff that's going on in my sector. I always find it quite odd talking about innovation and technology as if it's a thing. It's probably not in our vocabulary, because everything that we do in life science is innovative and is all about technology. We're a sector that generally doesn't have any product, doesn't have any customers, and doesn't have any revenue. You're doing it wrong if you do as a biotechnology company for a while. So our assets, if you like, are our intellectual property families. So patents, as I don't need to tell Sean or anything about, is really what we have as a measure of that innovation and technology. If you're not constantly innovating, if your technology isn't absolutely world class, then you're obviously not going to survive as a life science company trying to develop a better or newer drug, device or diagnostic. So I guess as a sector, life science probably has an appreciation of its degree of innovation and sees its intellectual capital as an asset and a thing. As part of the diversification of the economy locally, I think that's really coming to the fore for at least another 2 sectors, and certainly with OGTC, I think protecting that knowledge, that intellectual capital around oil and gas that has been created over the past few decades, and leveraging a future on that basis. And to that degree, businesses are probably going to change in the future, because innovation and technology isn't necessarily around businesses with big footprints that employ a lot of people. It's more about the intellectual capital that you sat on, and it's a very different way of appreciating and identifying the value in what we have, certainly across life science, the energy sector, and even food and drink. There's a lot of innovation going on locally. We've got some fantastic food and drink companies, and again, they can protect and maximize a lot of what they do, not necessarily about the product, but the technology around generating that product. I think because we're all getting on the same page with this, and Opportunity North-east does have a lot to do with it, there's going to be more and more crosstalk across the 4 sectors, the 4th being tourism, and we need a fantastic environment to attract people to the region if we're going to grow and protect these businesses and develop more technology. So I think that the crosstalk across the different sectors in the region is going to be quite interesting, and we probably don't appreciate how much commonality there is from one sector to another. I'd like to think life science can hopefully lead the way and be a useful model for the other sectors in terms of really understanding and maximising and leveraging the value of the innovation that any business has delivered on. So obviously I'm biased because I'm from the life science sector. We've been innovating locally for 500 years. One of the oldest medical schools in Europe is here in Aberdeen. First MRI scanner, I'm sure you all know that, is currently in the Sutty Gallery at the hospital. So we've been doing this and getting along with it quite quietly for a few hundred years, a little bit longer than the oil and gas sector. And that's going to continue anyway, so it'd be great to think that things are going to change and evolve in the same positive way towards more intellectual capital for the other sectors in the region.
Thank you very much, and perfect timing. Leaving plenty of time for David to have a dig back about oil and gas being younger and cooler than life sciences or something like that.
Thanks, and good morning, everybody. David Miller, I'm responsible for the new technology accelerator at the Oil and Gas Technology Centre, which is called TechX, which we're launching later this year. So really excited to be working very closely with a number of entities in this space, including One, OGIC, Scottish Enterprise, Elevator, etc. We've seen over the last 30 years the exponential acceleration of technology across both consumer and industrial markets that are affecting us in the way that we live and work to unprecedented levels. CEOs now quoting and saying that technology development and the speed of this and the disruption that's causing within their markets as one of their main concerns going forward. Not only having to look over their shoulders for their competition, but also for these bearded, sandal-wearing startups that are coming out of left field, which are disrupting their markets and gobbling up market share, which they just can't account for. So it's having a huge impact on markets across the world. The northeast of Scotland has a vibrant history of innovation and inventors. You mentioned the MRI, pneumatic tyre, insulin, to name a few, and a number of engineering firsts in the oil and gas sector as well. But unfortunately, the startups that are able to break into markets and really cause disruption and grow and scale are very few in number compared to those that actually try. The Elevator supports around 2,500 businesses every year. So Elevator is a social enterprise based up in Bridget-Don, responsible for supporting economic development through entrepreneurship. So they support a lot of businesses, but usually between 5 and 7% of these only really make it to the point of scale up and having a real impact in their markets. And I think that's something that we can have an impact and change here in the northeast of Scotland through the work that is going on in the Oil and Gas Technology Centre and and others. So I think in terms of my vision for the northeast is a bit more of a collaborative and cohesive offering, which is something that hasn't been there in the past. For an entrepreneur landing in the northeast of Scotland, the ecosystem can be a little bit confusing to understand who I can go to, who can give me support, where can I get mentoring, where can I get funding, depending on the stage that my company or my product is at. But it's great to see that is now changing, that we're filling the holes and we're providing a much more cohesive offering, so that if you are here in the northeast of Scotland and an entrepreneur in oil and gas or life sciences or tourism or food and drink, whether you're at a concept stage or whether you're a startup or whether you're looking to scale up and grow, that in the next 6 to 12 months you will be able to get the support that you need, the mentoring that you need from sector specific experts, and the funding that you need to be able to help you to get to where you need to get to at an accelerated pace compared to previous times. So I think my vision for the future is very much in that space, that we will be able to help these entrepreneurs get into markets much quicker than before, and that we can really put the northeast of Scotland back on the map as an innovation and technology powerhouse.
Fantastic. Well done, guys. All stayed to time. So what we're going to do is, this is where it opens out to you. At any point you can just catch my eye and ask a question of the panel. But if you pick up your remote controls, I'll call them that because I don't know what they're actually called, but remote controls works for me. And I'm going to start you with a question. So it's around infrastructure. So there is currently £8.9 billion worth of investment planned in the region, and it's around the region which will benefit the northeast. So we've got transport, commercial infrastructure, digital infrastructure, new funding for sector and working groups and tech, education and training, and another. Now if you put other, I might have to work out who's put that and ask you what you meant. So what I'm going to ask you to do is press one of those buttons and do it now. And you've got 1 second left. Right, okay, and the answer is, a heady mix. And nobody did the other, you bunch of cowards. I guess I'm probably a little bit surprised that transport and infrastructure is maybe quite so high. Jackie, having been a telecoms man, are you surprised that actually infrastructure and digital sense is an important one?
I'm not surprised that it's there, because certainly people recognise today that connectivity is a big issue. In our context, we probably assume it, and we look to work beyond that, but certainly we would like to think that the region has got the best connectivity, whether it's roads or telecommunications infrastructure that will support data speeds that we all would like to have and use. I think for me the answer to the question is all. It needs to have all those components in place. I'm surprised there's nothing in office space. Obviously we know there is vacant office space, but it's the nature of the space, it's the cost of the space, it's the connectivity of the space to your customers. The space that we have is designed very much to accommodate what was very much an oil and gas driven growth through the last 20, 30 years, and we need to make sure that what we have in terms of our infrastructure covers everything that we need going forward for the next 20, 30, 40 years.
David, I just want to check in with you on the additional sector working groups and funding, I suppose. I mean, that's effectively what the Oil and Gas Technology Centre was born out of. How much of what you're doing could have happened in the absence, appreciating its early days, but you're already starting to see quite a number of companies come through and visit your premises and actually doing stuff?
So yeah, I mean, we've seen an unprecedented level of take-up since we formally launched the centre in February this year. So we're in a sense, a startup ourselves. We'd budgeted for 18 members by the end of this year. At the moment we have 52, and that number is increasing every day. We've got 22 projects active at the moment with over £12.5 million already invested. And we need to be up to £33 million of investment by March next year, which is our target. And we have projects in the pipeline to deliver that. And we have 8 active field trials at the moment offshore. So we've seen an unprecedented uptake in the industry, because I think from a timing perspective and the state of the industry, there's only so far you can go with leaning our organizations and reducing costs, that now people are waking up and realizing the importance of technology and innovation to help them get ahead and help make the industry sustainable for the future. And I think it's a great blueprint that other sectors can leverage and learn from as well, to help leverage our learnings and the structure that we've put in place to help them deliver a similar impact in their areas as well.
Could you just explain to people how your membership works? Because actually, that whole process of getting people to engage properly, to save money and commit is quite interesting.
So yeah, we've got 180 million from the regional sector deal, which Jackie mentioned. So of a total of 250 that Aberdeen and Aberdeenshire got, we've got the lion's share of that. So that's spread over 10 years. And we have to match every penny of that with industry funding. So that's a nominal pot of £360 million to spend invest over 10 years, which is a huge amount of money. So we need operators and service companies to help us to contribute to that pot. But we're not looking for cash, we're looking for in-kind contribution. So that's access to people, access to facilities, to data. And we take that as contribution to the projects that we run through the centre. So our membership is there really for companies to choose to get involved in the different areas that we're focusing on, whether that's asset integrity, digital, well construction, decommissioning, and small pools, where through their membership, one, they get to contribute in kind towards the projects that we're delivering, but also they get a chance to help steer the technology that we are getting after and developing that helps meet some of their needs as an operator or service company. So it's a way for companies to commit to the program, show their willingness to support, but also have a chance to help steer our activity, because we are ultimately industry-led. So we let the industry lead us in terms of the technology and focus areas that we need to get involved in. So the membership is to help people to get involved, to commit, and help us steer the direction of the oil and gas industry future.
As I say, just grab my, if you want to ask guys anything. Just over a question over here, in the corner. Just say who you are. Yeah.
What would you have chosen as the area to provide for?
Good facilitation. I like that question. Deborah.
Digital
Cracker.
infrastructure for me, definitely.
Yeah.
I think, as I said, I wouldn't have chose just one. I take digital infrastructure as a given. There's a lot of good work going on from a lot of different bodies at the minute to ensure that this region has the best digital infrastructure. So I would have chosen the office one, because to me the issue for us is ensuring that we support the growth of tech companies and the environment in which tech companies can be supported in relation to ideation, startup and scale up is a different context today than the kind of infrastructure that we've got. So whether it's a hub for life sciences or food and drink and OGTC for oil and gas, it's what you do after that and where companies can go to, the cost of it, the location of it, the environment, etc., how people interface with each other.
And then I'll go David, because I'm going to come back to Shona.
So I think for me, I would have probably gone with number 4. Obviously, given seeing the benefit we're seeing through the OGTC and how we might be able to leverage that for other sectors. So definitely number 4. I probably would have also chosen number 5. So I think there's a lot more we need to do in terms of getting into schools to help educate them in terms of what's going on within the likes of the oil and gas industry. So we are seeing a lot of people move away from wanting careers because they've either seen their mums or their dads or friends lose their jobs in recent times, and the impact that can have on families. So I think we need to provide more education in terms of what is going on in the oil and gas sector, and that there is a prosperous career for them over the next kind of 30, 40 years to help educate them in that space, as well as the other sectors as well. So I think we don't do enough. I think it's great through the likes of DYW and Career Ready and other programs that are available that we are getting in and supporting young people to help them make choices for their careers. But I think there's a lot more we can do in that space. So I would have chosen number 5.
And Shona?
I think probably 4 and 2 are the big ones for me, and I'm quite surprised no one went for 2 for similar reasons to Jackie described, is that there's a lot of sort of young tech startup companies, and Aberdeen's not, or the North-east is not necessarily the most appealing place for them to start up, just due to lack of relevance, facilities and space from which them to start up and grow in. So I would probably go with 2.
So my follow-up question was from an IP protection point of view. What kind of challenges do you see when actually all of these guys are talking about collaboration and companies working very closely together, working almost partly with a third sector organisation almost to develop new technology and ways of working, and yet, you know, in terms of protecting IP, I guess that's pretty tricky.
Yeah, I mean, it is a challenge, and it's a mindset as well that sort of has to be overcome. And you know, a lot of businesses will you put contracts in place effectively to try and deal with how the IP will be protected, shared, and used going forward. And sometimes those contracts, the discussions can become protracted. If you're contracting with academia, they want to publish, but perhaps the business needs to patent. So how do you manage that frustration? Because if it's published prior to patent protection, you won't get that patent protection. So there are real issues there, but we are seeing a sort of shift to more collaboration and more availability, and we're seeing it as well in technology with open source software. I mean, some businesses are building their entire business model on open source software, which is readily available because and using open source software because it drives down the costs and accelerates innovation. So the end result is more lucrative for them. So there does need to be a bit of a shift in mindset in terms of what the overall benefit of that sharing is, but it can be managed through contracts, and but it can be a frustrating process for businesses to go through. But I think it's becoming more streamlined as people get more used to it.
I guess you'll know somebody who's able to help in that field anyway.
I could probably make a recommendation.
So next question. So the primary issue that the innovation and technology sector, if it is a sector, I suppose, needs to address in the short term to achieve its long-term objective growth objectives. So there's a whole list there. Retaining talent, office space again, connectivity. Interestingly, David spoke about it, I think Sean as well, that place piece, investment and funding, barriers, regulation, new markets, and trade post-Brexit. Well, good luck with that one. So choose what one you think is most important to deal with now. And you're all done in 7 seconds. Okay, so the talent piece. Deborah, I'm just wondering which, when you look at that talent, I suppose, you'll know this as a business yourself, but to what extent is that statement a reflection of a lot of other things that need to happen, or is it something that you can do by yourself within your business?
It's a great point. I mean, you can have the best idea in the world. You can have an idea for technology without a team and people to deliver on it. And I suppose stopping that turnover and retaining the talent as well, it will be very difficult to grow and develop further. For our sector, we're very lucky. Shona mentioned before, we've got 2 fantastic universities in the city, and our sector probably very different from the energy sector, and we've got more talent than we know what to do with, and the number of CVs that come across my desk, it's just heartbreaking that we're not there yet with a big enough cluster to accommodate. So we're actually losing talent too early on because there aren't the posts to initially anchor people in the North-east, which is such a shame. But we can't get rid of them once you do get them. So retention isn't a problem for us. It's at least in terms of the technical talent, it's here. Management talent is another thing altogether. So most boards of even Scottish life science companies are based south of the border. And this is the bit I mentioned before about crosstalk. We've got such fantastic talent here that could be brought across into life science. I think we've got some homegrown stars that don't quite realise their skills are completely transferable, and life science businesses aren't that different. So absolutely, I think without the talent, you're not going to be able to grow. I'd probably go for investment and funding as the equal bit. You're not going to get a concept off the ground or be able to grow it, particularly in a pre-revenue business, without that piece. And that's another bit that is lacking. I think our sector sees a lot of the cash rotating back into oil and gas businesses, because that's what people understand in the North-east. It will be great once we hopefully have another couple of life science success stories that people realise, again, it's not that different. There's some fantastic returns to be made, and even getting some local investment back into the life science sector.
I guess on that investment piece, though, there'll be a whole lot of people out there, a generation of probably wealthy Aberdonians who have put money into oil and gas companies and probably would consider doing that, but they probably just don't understand what you do, I'm guessing.
Exactly, and I think that's why we need a bit more in the public domain, some kind of more information there, so there is that understanding and people just go, oh, you know, it's so different, I could never invest. And in fact, that this perception from this industry that you really have to understand life science, you never get a person who's going to be expert in everything. The best analyst will only understand a few disease areas, so I think a degree of education and getting people comfortable with the risk profile rather than the actual technology, and that it's not that different from an investment in an energy business, and in fact the returns can actually be greater. And of course the bigger picture is you're doing some good stuff as well, and you get lots of EIS relief. It's an excellent investment, just saying.
And before I move on to the next question, David, just on the expansion into new markets, to what extent are you looking at, and are companies looking at, global challenges of the oil and gas sector rather than kind of North Sea challenges, with that whole focus around maximising economic recovery in the UK? And where do you sit on that? What comes first?
So our priorities are absolutely UKCS first, so driven by the MER agenda to tackle those as a priority. So our solution centres are very much focused on those themes that are set to us by the industry and the problems we need to fix today to help fix the MER agenda. But we also have a Transform Tomorrow space where we are starting to look at the low carbon agenda and the new technologies and companies that we will need to help move the oil and gas forward into that space. So the challenges we face in the North Sea are challenges that a lot of other basins are going to face ultimately eventually. So I think the technologies that we develop as part of our program are absolutely transferable to the global market. And certainly in the accelerator space, we are looking to attract startups globally to come here to Aberdeen to go through the program and hopefully anchor them here in the North-east, not only to serve the UKCS, but also to export their product internationally from here as well, so that we can see that economic development for the North-east as well. So, while we have a UK focus initially, we definitely have global ambitions.
Okay. Collaboration came up in the last slide. Here's a question.
I had a question. It's probably off the back of the previous question. It talks about attracting investment and funding. So we have a backdrop where this region has contributed significantly tax revenues to our country's economy. And we talk about standalone figures of 250 million for the city deal, 180 matched by industry for GTC. And the task is massive, rebranding Aberdeen more than just oil and gas, and time criticality associated with the need for innovation and technology. What's your feeling around the adequacy of the funding and investment to date? Because standalone, it's a significant amount of money. The city deal as compared to other city deals across the country?
So my opinion, which I think is also shared by others, I think the 180 million that we have over 10 years, it's a great start. And I think it will allow us to tackle the elements of fix today, the things that we can get after that are just about there, and help accelerate them into the industry. I think it will allow us to start to tackle the MER agenda and the elements in that we need to get after. But if we really want to start moving forward into the low carbon agenda, the transform tomorrow space, and the technologies that haven't yet been conceived that we need to support and accelerate into the market, then we need more time, we need more funding to be able to do that. 180 million won't get us across all three areas. So it's a good start. It will allow us to make progress and show that we can deliver very fast and deliver great technology into the industry, and hopefully that will allow us to attract further funding to get after the big ticket items that will take us into the 21st century and beyond.
I guess not many people would say it's enough. Everybody always wants more, but as somebody who was involved in the business case, Jackie, how do we make our case to say actually it wasn't and isn't enough, and how does the North-East get more? Because this is not just a problem for funding around business issues like this. It does seem to be something which is a recurring issue around the North-East getting its fair share. You hear that a lot. So what are we doing wrong?
I don't think we're doing anything wrong. David's entirely correct. The track record of the OGTC will demonstrate that the model works, that the collaboration that exists between industry and tech companies to bring new tech in an accelerated manner, which will enable more recovery, which will enable more tax take, etc., which will hopefully delay decommissioning, etc., will be of benefit for everybody. So once you've demonstrated that the model works, I think you can then make a further business case. We had to be respectful at the end of the day of not going to government for too much, otherwise we could end up with nothing. So in that context, we put a pitch for a certain level of income. We achieved it, we were able to get after it, and now the task will be to deliver on that and then go back for more if we believe we need it. I think we shouldn't forget the fact that industry invests directly themselves a lot in tech development, so it's not just about government money. We need to make sure that Scottish businesses, North-East businesses continue to invest and invest more in tech development. If you don't invest in innovation and technology, you will not be competitive going forward. So whether it's in people and talent and having the right people to be able to invest, or whether it's in the equipment, it's the sum of the parts that will make the difference. But yeah, we would all love a bigger slice of the pie, but ultimately it's a start, and we can grow through the track record that the guys will deliver against, and likewise in life sciences when they get their innovation hub up and running.
So the North-East's favourite word, collaboration. What's the biggest hurdle to overcome to encourage collaboration? And as I say, it must be a word that I've heard a lot over the few years. So we've got 5 options: IP protection, losing commercial advantage, which we heard a little bit about earlier, overly complicated contractual agreements. Please choose that one because it will give me some ammo. And lack of opportunity to identify potential partners, and other. So please press your buttons now. Okay, all done. Okay, so this is interesting. So, I was asking earlier about this whole issue of open source and collaboration, and actually the biggest fear out in the audience is that you lose commercial advantage. So maybe I wasn't such an idiot after all. So how do you get over this, from a legal point of view, without then falling straight into number 3?
I mean, I'm not really surprised to see that as the result. And I mean, it is a concern. You put your IP out there, other people get access to it. But I have to defer to number 3 because it is the contracts that give people that comfort that they can collaborate and do what they need to do. But I think what we should also be thinking about, because I think that the concern is losing the commercial advantage and the competitive advantage, but I think that's maybe when you're thinking about intra-sector collaboration. But there are opportunities cross-sector, and it's sort of been saying that we are expecting different sectors to talk to each other. So if you're looking beyond your own sector, yes, there's always the risk of losing competitive advantage, but there's real opportunities to be very innovative and to talk to people that are working on similar technology, but with different applications, which other people might not have thought of. And so for me, I think it's the key thing is the opportunity to identify those collaborative partners in other industry sectors, to have those conversations, to spark ideas, and to be really innovative. So.
Okay. And Deborah, have you yet worked with somebody in your kind of way of working rather than necessarily your technologies, such in the oil and gas sector or food and drink or?
Absolutely. So we're collaborating with a food and drink company at the moment,
right.
and with academia as well. So I think that's the other piece. And back to what Shona said in your first 5 minutes, again, it's probably part and parcel of what we do in life science, and most of our technology will come from an academic institution anyway, or academics or clinicians will have a particular bit of expertise that we need to tap into. So absolutely on the contracts, having worked with as many universities as we do, and even spinning our very first piece of IP out of the Rowett back in 2004. And it's great that it's something we always talk about. I don't think it's ever really going to improve. It's just part of universities and academia doing what they're supposed to do, which is protect their IP and not want to cut the apron strings too early. I think there are a lot more opportunities for collaborating cross-sector, and for me, you're less likely to run into someone who's a competitor if it's going to be cross-sectoral, and you are looking for new applications that neither of you may understand ever existed if it's going across to another sector. So I would actually say even collaborating with a very different business is a safer bet. You're less likely to lose competitive advantage than if it was with somebody from your own sector doing something quite similar to what you do, and you really need a very good contract in place if you're doing that. So ironically, I think collaborating with the most different business from yours is probably the easiest way to go, and yeah, the easiest way to protect your competitive advantage and grow that.
And who put other? And what was it?
For me, it was about behaviours.
Behaviours, okay, yeah.
There's a perception around the element of collaboration as uninformed.
Yes.
Tracking behaviours
Yeah.
is a really piece.
I think I totally agree with that, and I don't mean it in a behaviours context. I look at a micro and a macro level. What Deborah and Sean have been talking about to me is micro. You're looking at IP, you're looking specifics to do with technology. If we take it back to the context, the reason why one exists is to maximise economic recovery, but also to diversify the economy. And a key part to diversifying the economy will be people working across sectors, learning lessons, moving into new areas. And that's only going to be achieved if people have an open-minded approach to change, to innovation, to listening, to learning. And we can take a position in the North-east where we are a place to be because we have an open and collaborative culture. And I think ultimately oil and gas in particular, having spent 10 years in a subsea company and being a project manager and worked with contracts to deliver, it is not good for the principle of collaboration. Teamwork and behaviours are essential in that context. Contracts make life very difficult for everybody in terms of the way we have got the industry into it. And we need to change how we work in that context, and that's going to take a long, long time. But generally at a macro level, collaboration is key to the region's future. It'll be underpinning what we do in diversification.
So our next question is about that retaining talent more widely, more than the micro level. So what would we do to do that? Invest in training skills, make Aberdeen a cool place to live. Saying cool is probably not cool. Improve facilities for young start business, we heard some about that. Diverse employment opportunities, transport links or other. So crack on. Right. Okay, so we've spoken about that kind of cross-sectoral opportunities a little bit earlier, and we spoke about the specific office and startup space as well, so they've come out very high. David, I set you up earlier for this one, I'm afraid. So being young and cool and all that, how do we make number 2 relevant to the tech sector?
That's a great question. I think it's one we've debated with yourselves and Russell at the Chamber as well in terms of trying to understand. I think there's an element of perception around Aberdeen and the messaging around Aberdeen that we need to tackle and address. I think there's a visibility of a lot of the great stuff that is going on in Aberdeen at the moment. £8.5 billion worth of investment projects, new accelerators getting set up, new funding available. Aberdeen is going to be a very different and amazing place in the next 3 to 4 years. So I think a lot of that contributes to making Aberdeen really attractive and to retain some of the talent. But I think we also need to take into account the shift that we're seeing in the younger generations that are coming up and their attitude towards work. Whereas traditionally from, taking my own experience, it was very much go to school, go to university, get a degree, maybe stay on, get another, and then get into the world of work and work hard to get a career. And the attitude is changing quite considerably with the younger generations coming through and what they're looking for from a career. And very much, they don't necessarily see or fear the risks of starting up on their own and doing stuff that really excites them and gets them out of bed in the morning, rather than that I've got to go to university, I've got to get a career, I've got to work my way up the ladder. So I think we need to take that into account as well. So I definitely think there's an element of perception and facilities around Aberdeen, and I think we're tackling a lot of that with some of the projects that we've got going on. Changing the messaging across the UK about Aberdeen. So, when people land in Aberdeen and they get in a taxi, the taxi driver's talking about how amazing this place is, rather than, it's doom and gloom and all the rest of it. So there's a lot we need to do in that space. But I think also being cognizant of how we can support the younger generations and give them what they want to help them get a foot up in what they want to do and change the world ultimately as well.
Okay, I don't want to run up too hard against 9:30. So the last question here is just about the importance of innovation and technology. You've come to a breakfast on innovation and technology, so I've got a feeling I might know how you're going to answer this one. So is it very important? Important because the growth of the sector will have a generally positive impact on your business. It's generally important, but probably wouldn't benefit you per se, or it's not important at all, in which case you're here for the bacon rolls, which is fine as well. Okay, so the unsurprising result of the day. I'm going to give the last word to Sean over the end there. So why is this such an important space to the North-east, and why do you spend so much of your effort on it in Brodies?
Well, it's exciting, first and foremost, because it is what's going to drive the city forward. And I mean, we've talked about the benefits for business, we've talked about the benefits for the city overall that can come from this. And innovation in itself can transform the North-east and make it ready for the future. We've seen other cities sort of turn around and do various things, and it feels to me like now is the time that Aberdeen's really sort of addressing this, and that the North-east is really moving and embracing technology and innovation. And there is so much talent, appetite for moving things forward up here, and I think it's hopeful, and it's exciting.
Thank you very much. Once again, the panel have made it impossible for me to summarise the discussion. I think the main thing I suppose I've got, as much as anything, this seems to be a way of being rather than a thing, rather than a sector, and that's come across. I suppose the other interesting thing, if we're changing our ways of working, often this stuff is measured around patents and R&D spend. Maybe we should be measuring it through number of men wearing sandals and having beards, a number of women with thick glasses and flowery blouses. Jackie, I'll let you take that in the business case next time as an idea. So could you put your hands together for a panel of Shona, Jackie, Deborah and David, please? So just my final pieces. Thank you to the team at Brodies for setting it up today, for being here early in the morning, letting us in. Thank you for your participation. We've got 2 more of these events, one in oil and gas, one in infrastructure, as we go through the year. Next one's on the 9th of November, same time, same place, and that is on oil and gas. And then the Vanguard series this round concludes on the 5th of December, and actually at that session what there will be is a dozen or so groups coming back to present their ideas on 12 transformative projects for the northeast of Scotland. So if you are interested in, I suppose, getting involved in the transformation of the northeast, that might be a good place to be to see how you can contribute. So there is nothing else for me to say, but you are off duty and back to work. Thank you for coming along, and we'll see you at an event soon or around the northeast, I'm sure. Thank you.